Number 10. Mike Myers. Mike has had an absolutely stellar career. This dude is behind some of the most iconic characters to ever grace our screens. Wayne Campbell, Austin Powers, Shrek. But his most iconic character, of course, was Cat in the Hat, a movie which was so universally panned that it caused Dr. Seuss's wife to demand that the studio move to exclusively animated features. I guess watching the cat fix a couch with his bum crack hanging out wasn't the wholesome image that her husband had in mind when writing the character. But the Cat in the Hat was actually a deliberate project created by Mike himself. See, about 3 years before that movie was made, Mike was set to write and star in a film based around his Saturday Night Live character, Dieter. In fact, a script was written with Jack Black and Will Ferrell in mind as the supporting cast. Production was about to begin when suddenly Mike pulled out of the project, saying that he was not happy with the script that he helped write with his Austin Powers partner Michael McCullers. By pulling out of the project, he was violating his contract, and Universal Studios slapped him with 2 lawsuits. Now, nobody knows the specifics of why this happened, but there was a secret meeting between Mike and the studio, and they worked out a deal that instead of giving Mike another SNL sketch-based movie, they would allow him to adapt a property that was sitting on their back burner for a few years after acquiring the rights to some Dr. Seuss properties. That movie was Cat in the Hat, a movie that for some reason Mike was thrilled to do. He liked the script for that movie more than the one that he wrote himself. Apologies if talking about Cat in the Hat has given anyone unwanted flashbacks. Number 9. Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis has starred as the leading man on so many projects that they could occupy their own list. But there was one project that Bruce was supposed to lead that fell flat into the gutter. In 1997, Bruce had signed off on a deal with Disney to star in and produce a film called Broadway Brawler. The film was centered around Bruce playing a retired hockey player who comes to terms with his reality and starts a romance. It's cute. The goal was to make a Jerry Maguire-esque movie, but they just ended up with a waste of time and money. As I said, Bruce produced and starred in this movie, meaning that he held a lot of power compared to his fellow performers and crew. Bruce had apparently been frustrated with some of the crew members on the film, and 5 weeks into filming he abruptly stopped the project one day to fire everybody, specifically 4 people, which was the director, the co-director, the cinematographer, and a wardrobe designer, all of whom were veterans in the business. Many people who have worked on the project blame Bruce for his part on the shoot, apparently misusing his power and ultimately getting the entire thing cancelled. But there may have been some logic to his diva behavior. Following the cancellation, Disney still had a signed contract for at least 3 films with his name on it. Given the situation, they could have sued him for ruining the shoot, but instead they made him film those movies. While he was reluctant to do so, the movies that he was forced to do were Armageddon, The Sixth Sense, and Unbreakable, which are among the best performances of his career, with The Sixth Sense being the part of the reason that he is so famous. Can one movie, and 2 more shall take its place. Number 8. Channing Tatum. Channing is another celebrity on this list who tends to be casted as the leading man. Movies like Magic Mike, 21 Jump Street, and so many more have allowed him to showcase both his comedic and his action chops. In 2009, Channing starred as Duke, the leader of the GI Joes, in a live-action film adaptation of the popular cartoon series of the same name. The first film was fun, but it certainly wasn't a masterpiece in cinema. In fact, the project would have been 10 times better had the studio let Channing and the crew have more creative freedom. Instead, the movie was being made to be a by-the-numbers origin movie, setting up a whole slew of projects. Well, only 2 movies ever spawned from that one, but not with Channing involved. In the early stages of writing GI Joe 2, Channing had been tapped to star in the aforementioned 21 Jump Street as the lead alongside Jonah Hill. Wanting to focus his time on the shoot, he initially tried to have the entire GI Joe 2 project cancelled, fearing that he may get stuck in a franchise that he just didn't want to be a part of. But instead, the studio decided to end his character and just replace him with someone who was more willing to stay with them for as long as they needed, so of course they called Dwayne Johansson. Channing made a brief appearance in the second movie, but he was taken out only 10 minutes into the runtime, and that ended up being a great decision as the franchise tanked and 21 Jump Street made him millions. Number 7. Seth MacFarlane. Okay, nerds! Let's go! Revenge of the Nerds was supposed to be a comedy when it first released, but it's aged very poorly and is now considered to be one of the creepiest movies to ever come out of the 1980s. If you've seen it, you know. If you haven't, keep it that way. The premise of this movie was solid. The fraternity Lambda Lambda Lambda, a group of college nerds, band together to defeat the evil Alpha Betas fraternity and claim their place on the Greek Council. It's a nice, normal, fun college movie that was filled with scenes and subject matter that I can't talk about or show because it's a rough one. It's a rough one. However, a reboot of the franchise was set to begin begin production a few years ago with Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane as the producer and director. Initially, Seth was really excited to make this thing happen, but the studio was not as excited as he was. They were receiving numerous complaints about the content of the original movie over fears that the material may not be different enough to wipe the past clean. Remember, the internet is forever, and the original Revenge of the Nerds is a franchise. That's right, there are 4 of those movies, and I do have to say, why? Why 4? Who did that? So if anyone is about to reboot the movie, every scene that we can't show will be plastered on the internet with the hashtags #CancelTheNerds. So Seth MacFarlane decided to tank the project before anyone was officially hired, as to avoid any negativity. Now, while it has been cancelled for now, according to Seth, he is working on a more PG-13 version of the script and intends to completely reinvent the franchise. That's the laugh from the original movie, it's fun. Number 6, Shailene Woodley. Shailene had a very lucrative year in 2014 thanks to the successful box office numbers brought back from her roles in the movies Fault in Our Stars and the first Divergent film. Both were live-action adaptations of book properties. Fault in Our Stars followed Shailene as a cancer patient who meets and falls for Gus Waters, aka Ansel Elgort, who is similarly afflicted with cancer. In Divergent, she plays Trish Pryor, a young woman living in a world divided by factions who discovers that she doesn't fit into one specific group. And fun fact, Ansel Elgort played her brother in that movie. Remember, same year. No one saw a problem with that. Divergent is a trilogy that ended its time on screen in 2016 with the 3rd installment, Allegiant Part 1, as they were trying to pull a Twilight and stretch the last movie into 2 entries. Which works when you release the second part. After the absolute box office bomb that was Part 1, the studio were iffy to make a follow-up but wanted to cap off the series in a nice way rather than just end it on a cliffhanger. Well, Shailene said no to that. Her disappointment with the franchise had grown so large that she was constantly frustrated with the directors on set. And when the concept for Part 2 rolled around, she made sure that she always had something else going on that would prevent her from making the film. In fact, she just released a dramedy called Robots with Jack Whitehall that looks pretty funny. It's probably a good thing that movie never got made, because by the end of 2017, the whole young adult novel thing kinda fizzled out. But with that new Hunger Games show coming out, who knows? Maybe we'll get some new ones. I hope not, I really don't. Number 5, Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson is no stranger to being the leading lady. Over the years, she's stolen the screen in movies like Lucy and Under the Skin, but unfortunately that leading lady status has landed her in trouble a few times. The first grievance people in Hollywood tend to have is her role as the lead in the film Ghost in the Shell, released in 2017. This was a live-action adaptation of an anime of the same name, because you know, that always goes really well. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, Scarlett is a pretty solid actor, but she was not the person that this role was written for. Many fans of the original property were very upset that the role did not go to an actor of Japanese descent, and there are plenty of people to choose from that would have done an incredible job. Imagine if Karen Fukuhara from The Boys played this character. She would have slain it. The film received terrible reviews upon release and made Scarlett rethink another role that she had been casted to play, who was a trans character in a film called Rub and Tug. When news broke about this, it was right when the backlash for Ghost in the Shell was dying down, but Scarlett doubled down and took another role that didn't belong to her, and that time, she took action. She spoke with the creative team and tried to come up with a game plan to give herself a different role in the project and bring on a real trans actor. But the studio basically said, no, you're famous, so we use you. So Scarlett did the only thing that she could legally do, quit the project and force them to cancel the entire thing, which is exactly what happened. Thankfully, Scarlett learned from that mistake, and she has since starred in several projects that are more suited to herself. Number 4, Emily Blunt. This is an entry where an actor really tried to get their movie canceled, but they were forced to go through with it anyway. But they really should have just listened to her in this case. In 2010, Emily was on Marvel Studios' short list of actors who they wanted to portray the character Black Widow. In fact, she was at the top of that list, but she was unfortunately contractually obligated to make the movie Gulliver's Travels starring Jack Black and Jason Segel. The film was based on a novel of the same name and followed the titular Gulliver washing up on the shores of Lilliput, a small island filled with small people, like really small. Emily Blunt played the Princess Mary, and when she heard that she was supposed to play Black Widow, she leaped at the opportunity. She tried everything that she could to get herself out of the deal that she made with the studio, but there was no loophole or solution of any kind that would have ended with her not being sued. So she ventured on, and Scarlett Johansson did a great job in the role, but we can't help but imagine what would have been. Number 3. Eva Green. Eva Green has been involved in a lengthy court case thanks to a project that never got off the ground. The film was called A Patriot, and Eva was set to star as the leading lady, until the film was cancelled due to never being able to properly get studio funding. Now at the time, Eva was under a pay or play contract, meaning that whether the film got off the ground or not, that she was going to get paid for her time. A payment that was supposed to be $1 million. Yep, they were like, yeah, let's give her $1 million before anyone even gave them $1 million to make the movie. Eva opened a court case against the studio claiming that they hadn't paid her yet, but the studio launched a counterclaim that she had conspired against the project to tank it on purpose. They claimed that she misused her contract and undermined the project, causing it to collapse in order to buy out the script and make the film herself. As part of the discovery process, several of her personal messages from the app WhatsApp were revealed to the court, proving that she had in fact said terrible things about the production, the script, the people, and everything and anyone that she was working with. She called people things that I can't say online, so just imagine something terrible someone has said to you, there you go. This not only proved that she was actively bogging down the project, but since that revelation, she hasn't received much work in Hollywood. Number 2. Tim Burton. Now, I have included Tim Burton on this list despite him not being a true actor, because the movie that was about to be made would have been neat. Not good, but neat. For those who may not know, Tim Burton is a big reason that superhero movies even exist after he directed the first 2 Batman movies, starring Michael Keaton in 1989 and 1992. Those movies were my childhood and are part of the reason that I'm freaked out by Danny DeVito no matter what he does. Thanks to the success of those films, Tim was given the green light by DC to write and direct another of their most famous properties. Superman. That's right, in 1995 we were supposed to be blessed with a Tim Burton-led Superman movie starring none other than Nicolas Cage as Superman. In fact, they were so far into the process that there is footage of Nick testing multiple versions of the suit, and everything seemed to be going well until Tim Burton got word from the studio that his movie would have to adhere to some guidelines set in place by the studio. Guidelines that were basically taking every ounce of creative freedom he had away, so Tim decided to do what any good director would do. He tanked his next movie. Now, does anybody remember the movie Mars Attacks? No? Well, in case you forgot, it's a movie about aliens taking over the Earth. Aliens who are destroyed by the sound of yodeling. I'm not making that up, that happened. Oh, and Tom Jones is in it as himself fighting aliens. While I personally found this entertaining, critics thought that it was the most random and bizarre movie that they had ever seen. It tanked at the box office despite boasting an all-star cast like Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, and Pierce Brosnan. But once the studio saw how bad Tim's passion project did, they decided to can Superman for good. Exactly how Tim wanted it to go, because since then, he has made tons of universally loved movies, so if James Gunn is smart, he'll hire Tim for the next Man of Steel. 2024, never know. And at number 1, Bill Murray. Bill's been around since the early 80s, being the face of some pretty big franchises like Groundhog Day and Ghostbusters. But in the mid-2000s, he decided to shift his efforts to voice acting and signed on to star in the live-action adaptation of the cartoon Garfield. But apparently he signed on to the project with the belief that he was working with Joel Coen, spelled C-O-E-N, of the Coen brothers, who made movies like Fargo and Burn After Reading, but it turns out that he instead signed to work on with Joel Coen, C-O-H-E-N, who wrote family comedies like Cheaper by the Dozen and Daddy Day Camp. Not the Oscar-nominated features that he was certain he was involved with, but honestly that's his fault though. Why would the director of Fargo make a movie about a cartoon cat that hates Mondays? There ended up being 2 Garfield movies, with the second one being straight to DVD. Why was there never a third, you may ask? Well, it's pretty simple. Bill Murray just didn't want to do it. The studio was prepared to release a third movie with a much lower budget, but Bill had been so fed up with the first 2 that he had already done that he decided just to drop the project and force them to shelve the script forever. Good job, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Number 10, Mark Wahlberg. M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening has been called one of the worst screw-ups of his career. But that obviously doesn't include the last Last Airbender, which I'm sure fans of the original series would rather forget. So it's no surprise that Mark Wahlberg trashed this ridiculous movie even though he had the lead role. The film follows Elliot Moore, a Philadelphia high school teacher who tries to keep his wife safe during a global crisis in which plants spread a neurotoxin that causes humans to take their own lives. Maybe it was something to do with photosynthesis, who knows. Wahlberg himself admitted that he had no idea what was happening in The Happening. He just took the role because he was tired of playing tough guys. Quote, "The Happening. F it. It is what it is. Effing trees, man. You can't blame me for not wanting to try to play a science teacher. At least I wasn't playing a cop or a crook." Shyamalan responded to the actor's criticism in 2019, and he really took the whole thing like a champ, saying, quote, "It's totally his call, however he wants to interpret it. At least he has a good attitude about it." Number 9. Rooney Mara. The horror genre definitely isn't for everyone, just ask Rooney Mara. The actress starred in a 2010 remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, which currently holds a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. So enough said there. It was a remake of the classic 80s horror movie of the same name, with the plot of the movie being centered around the infamous character Freddy Krueger. The actress basically said that it was something she didn't really want to do in the first place, and while speaking to Entertainment Weekly in 2011, she explained that it was just something she had to audition for, probably because her agent put her up for it, but unfortunately for her, she couldn't help but nail her audition. Quote, "You kind of learn to self-sabotage with things you don't want to get. Sometimes you don't want to get something, but you do a really good job and you get it anyway." That's kind of what happened with A Nightmare on Elm Street. In fact, Mara said that her experience working on A Nightmare on Elm Street was so bad that she wanted to stop acting forever. And because she felt like other projects were going to be similar, she wanted to pursue a different career entirely. I don't think that's even possible to trash a film more than that. Number 8. Dwayne Johnson. Movies based on video games are always hit or miss. If you're lucky, you'll get a Resident Evil. If not, you'll get 2016's Assassin's Creed with Michael Fassbender. So it could really go either way. It all comes down to whether or not the filmmakers understand the franchise, and if they have the ability to really pull it off. Dwayne Johnson's Doom was a major flop. To start off, the movie is about as 2000s as you can get, and not in a good way. The actor took to the stage at the Amway Arena in Orlando in 2008 and started dumping on the movie right away. Quote, "Did you ever see Doom? Well, you probably didn't, and it's okay because nobody else did either." It's pretty funny, but he wasn't wrong. Fans and critics alike thought the performances were awful, the action sequences were impossible to follow, and the violence was gratuitous. No wonder it sits at 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. Number 7. Jennifer Aniston. If you haven't seen Leprechaun yet, I'll get you up to speed. The 1993 horror about a little Irish monster who just wants to get his pot of gold stars Jennifer Aniston a few years before she became super famous on Friends. Aniston has made it clear that she would rather forget this movie ever existed, and it's probably for good reason. We'll never know if she ever watched the movie when it was released, but while speaking with People magazine in 2019, she revealed that her ex-husband Justin Theroux forced her to sit through it on one particular night. "I watched it like 8 years ago with our mutual friend Justin Theroux. We were dating. It was one of those things when I tried to get that remote out of his hand and there was just no having it. He was like, 'No, this is happening.'" And she went on to claim that she couldn't sit through it and just kept walking in and out of the room because she was cringing so much. She also added that she recognizes that the film is a cult classic, and that when she filmed it, she was still starting out as an actress and she couldn't believe she was actually starring in a movie. So it's nice to see that she was able to find the silver lining. Number 6. Anna Taylor-Joy. This one is really confusing because horror fans and critics everywhere collectively agree that 2015's The Witch is a stellar movie. It really jump-started everyone's love for elevated horror when it came out with its anxiety-inducing story of a 16th century family banished to the edges of polite society who fall prey to the devil. It was the total opposite of the kind of cheap, jump scare horror that we've been subjected to since the early 2000s. Anna Taylor-Joy has the lead role in the film, but according to her, the first time she watched it, she felt that not only would it come to nothing, but that it would actually destroy her career. Which is crazy because it literally did the opposite. While speaking with IndieWire in 2021, the actress explained that she saw The Witch a couple of hours before the audience at the Cannes Film Festival, and it sent her into a spiral. Quote, "I was devastated. I thought I'd never work again. I still get shivers thinking about it. It was just the worst feeling of, I have let people down that I love most in the world. I didn't do it right." She even said that she cried after watching it just from the stress. Fans will agree that she's definitely being too hard on herself, because since the film's release, her performance has received nothing but praise. Number 5. Halle Berry. The actress brought the femme fatale comic book superhero to life in 2004's Catwoman, but ever since then she has been pretty open about how bad she thinks the movie really is. To give you some perspective, the movie earned a measly 9% on Rotten Tomatoes and was trashed by fans and critics alike. And in 2005, the movie earned her a Razzie Award for Worst Actress. And the best part is that Berry actually showed up to accept it and took the opportunity to dump on the film. Quote, "I want to thank Warner Brothers for casting me in this piece of god-awful movie. It was just what my career needed. I was at the top, now I'm at the bottom." The infamous speech was not only hilarious but actually earned her a lot of respect from fans, considering how many actresses would not be willing to make fun of themselves or call out a terrible movie that they've been in. She also said that she wanted to thank the writers, all 20 of them, which proved to everyone that she was not only witty but a really good sport about the whole thing, adding that it was what it was, but if she had the chance to do it again, she'd hope to make it better. Number 4. Channing Tatum. After being launched into fame from 2006's dance flick Step Up, Channing Tatum decided to take on a more action-packed role in 2009, and ended up snagging the lead role in the sci-fi military movie GI Joe: Rise of Cobra. This movie managed to rake in over $300 million at the box office and was extremely popular at the time, so you'd think Channing would be proud of it. But no, in fact the actor has been super vocal about how much he hates the film. In 2015, Channing told Howard Stern, quote, "I'll be honest, I effing hate that movie. I hate that movie, I was pushed into doing it." He went on to explain that after he filmed Coach Carter in 2005, Paramount signed him onto a 3-movie deal, which sounded like a dream at the time in his career, but the issue was that by the time the studio actually got around to filming GI Joe, 4 years later, Channing's Hollywood career had taken off, and he didn't want to make what he already knew would be a terrible movie, since at that time he could afford to be more selective with his projects. Number 3. Katherine Heigl. I think we all remember 2007's rom-com Knocked Up with Katherine Heigl and Seth Rogen. It was not just hilarious but very well received all round, scoring an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes and bringing in $219 million at the box office against a $25 million budget. But Katherine was less than thrilled about her participation in the movie, playing Allison, a rising journalist who gets knocked up after a drunk one-night stand with Ben, an irresponsible stoner. The actress has since called the film sexist, telling Vanity Fair in 2008 that she thought the movie, quote, "paints women as shrews, as humorless and uptight. It paints the men as lovable, goofy, fun-loving guys." She went on to say that she had a hard time with the film on some days because she said that her character was a B-word and a killjoy. But some have argued that that's exactly what makes the dynamic between the two lead characters work so well, because they need to be able to bounce off each other. Although to be fair, Katherine does seem to get typecast as the uptight, workaholic character an awful lot. Number 2. Shia LaBeouf. The Transformers franchise is known for its gratuitous action, crazy explosions, and bankable blockbuster hype. But there's a reason that its star Shia LaBeouf left the Michael Bay franchise after 3 films and later went on to denounce the movies altogether. For the first 3 installments, Shia played Sam Witwicky, the likable hero at the center of a battle between ancient alien robots that can disguise themselves as conventional vehicles. The movies were immensely popular worldwide, but that just wasn't enough for Shia to look back on them in a positive light. In an interview with Esquire in 2018, the actor expressed his distaste for the franchise that was a significant part of his adolescence. Quote, "My hang up with those films was that they were irrelevant. They felt dated as F." He went on to compare the Transformers to movies with Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese, where there is value in what they do. Quote, "It's very hard to keep doing what you're doing when you feel like it's the antithesis of your purpose on this planet." He's completely entitled to his opinion, but not every action movie has to have a deeper philosophical meaning. Sometimes it's just entertainment. Number 1. Robert Pattinson. This one is actually hilarious, because even though the Twilight movies have arguably made Robert Pattinson a star, the actor has been pretty honest about his feelings towards the movies and their source material. Long story short, he is not a fan. In a 2008 interview with E! News, Pattinson described Stephenie Meyer's book, which was basically the plot for the first movie, as a book that wasn't supposed to be published. Yes, he actually said that. And when asked about his character, the sparkly vampire Edward Cullen, the actor also had some issues there. In another interview that same year, this time for Empire magazine, Pattinson outright said he hated his character. Quote, "The more I read the script, the more I hated this guy. So that's how I played him, as a manic depressive who hates himself. Plus, he's a 108-year-old virgin, so he's obviously got some issues there." That's really funny, but while Stephenie Meyer may not be too pleased with his comments, it's good to see that he's not afraid to make fun of something that he's worked on.